Firstly, I'd like to thank all of the other speakers that have come out today. Thank you, Sally. You were absolutely spot on with all of your references to law, everything. Spot on. Seriously, heed this woman's wisdom because she knows what she's talking about. Thank you. Thank you.
It's on the internet for everyone to learn. It's actually all on the internet for anyone to learn.
Well, it's going to be a little bit hard for me to follow up on those previous speeches. I'm actually tackling a very specific topic within the TPP, which is the investor-state dispute settlement system. Has anybody heard of that? Investor-state dispute settlement? No? Okay, well,
Is that when they sue?
well, this is classroom time. You guys are going to learn a lot here. So I just want to start off. We're gathered here to exercise our right as human beings, sovereign human beings, and also as democratic citizens to free assembly and to protest our public outrage against the proposed TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. As it has been made by the previous speakers, every facet of society, as we know, stands threatened by the implementation of this. An agreement largely negotiated in secret, drafted by corporate lobbyists, designed to reinforce the rights of the corporation. Yeah. As if it wasn't enough that 51% of the world's 100 wealthiest bodies are corporations. Now they want the entire lot. The aim of the TPP is to eliminate or at least substantially reduce barriers to trade and investment by forcing governments to deregulate important measures that are designed to protect human beings and by being able to sue governments if they choose to uphold laws that impede commerce. How can this be done? By what I said before, by little-known clause in free trade agreements known as the Investor-State Dispute Settlement System, or ISDS is the abbreviation for it. This means, like Adam said earlier in your speech, you briefly touched on it, that foreign corporations can actually sue countries if a domestic war endangers, and wait for this, its expected future profits. That means, just wait for this, under such a system, if a government denies a company a mining permit or issues stronger public health warnings on cigarettes, it can actually give corporations a basis to take legal action. This is based not only on what they invested in the country, but also based on what they claim they could have potentially earned on that investment over years or even decades. Let it be noted that this does not occur in the domestic courts of the nation involved in the dispute, but in ad hoc international tribunals. These tribunals consist of 3 corporate lawyers. They are unaccountable to any electorate. They are nominated by both parties with no transparency or oversight whatsoever. Let it also be noted, and this is really good, that only the investing party, the corporation, can sue a nation state, not the other way around. And also, by the way, just 15 lawyers, nearly all from the US, Europe, or Canada, have decided over 55% of all known disputes. In addition, several have been board members of major multinational corporations, including ones who had cases filed against developing nations. Does that sound like a conflict of interest to you?
Yeah.
Does that sound like a conflict of interest? Yes. The Democracy Centre is accurate in its statement, calling this method of international arbitration a privatised justice system for global corporations. Yeah. The tribunals are not bound by precedent, and there is no appeal mechanism. When a tribunal decides in favour of a foreign investor, the government must hand the corporation an amount of tax money, decided by the tribunal. It should be obvious that in order for the governments to avoid the threat of legal challenges, they will either change or weaken their regulations, or they'll just simply avoid passing legislation that would threaten corporate profits to begin with. This is, my friends, nothing short of corporations legally holding nation states at ransom. Legally holding nation states at ransom. I cannot stress that enough. And for what? For protecting the rights of its citizens? For protecting their land, their environment, what it's supposed to do?
So
Already.
Brother, you say that they can sue for profits that don't yet exist.
That don't actually exist. That they're in the future. Speculatively.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
It's true though, it's true. That's what they can do.
I looked it up. I got it in a book.
Already, many of the countries of the world are being attacked for upholding their constitutional agreements with their people. You may have heard of a case recently where Infinito Gold, a Canadian mining company is threatening to take the government of Costa Rica to international arbitration, seeking $1 billion in compensation after the country's Supreme Court denied permission for an open-pit gold mine situated near one of Costa Rica's major river systems. This was upheld in their own Supreme Court. In 2009, the government of Uruguay, following recommendations from the World Health Organization, increased the size of health warnings on cigarette packages. A year later, it was sued for US $2 billion by tobacco giant Philip Morris, which claimed Uruguay had expropriated its trademark. And there's an example closer to home that I'm going to get to as well. After an Ecuadorian court ordered Chevron to pay US $18 billion in damages and cleanup for an environmental disaster it caused in the Amazonian rainforest, Chevron countersued Ecuador, arguing that the government breached its investment treaty with the US by allowing the legal case to continue. And these are only a few examples in Latin America. In Australia, right here, when the government introduced the plain packaging laws, as I'm sure you guys probably know, to improve public health, Philip Morris Tobacco and others launched a challenge to the laws in the Australian High Court. When they were unsuccessful there, like privileged spoiled bullies, they lodged a claim at an international arbitration tribunal via an ISDS clause contained in a trade agreement with Hong Kong.
They actually moved their head office to one of the Chinese islands to do it.
No surprise there, no surprise there. This claim was made despite the fact that this law was made by a democratically elected parliament and had been deemed legitimate by the nation's highest court. This dispute is unresolved and is actually set to convene this month. I think in a week's time or something, I can't remember. In all of these cases, corporate rights are being enforced through free trade agreements and international tribunals, are compromising the right of democratically elected governments to regulate in the public good through the democratic process. This is what makes it so difficult for governments to genuinely implement policies that are based on the will of the people, based on human rights and environmental protection where corporate profits are at stake. The rights of human beings are more important than the rights of a corporation.
Yeah.
Do we agree? Yeah. Thank you. The rights of a corporation, an artificial fiction that exists only on paper, whose sole motive is to generate profits. And do you know what? Last time I checked, democracy is supposed to be one person, one vote, not $1, one vote. Is that right? Until we tackle the corrupt influence of corporations in how our countries are run, until corporations and the governments that accommodate them are held accountable for their insatiable lust for greed and for power, democratic progress on human rights and environmental protection and all the other issues that are important to us, the people, will not just remain slow, it will be utterly crushed by the relentless assault of corporate personhood through free trade agreements like the TPP.
Worse.
Yes, even worse. We must end this pervasive culture of corporate welfare. $4.5 billion in subsidies in mining in this country alone. And yet, our government has the audacity to say that it can't afford to take care of its own citizens. Millions of dollars cut in legal aid for Indigenous people. I mean, what are we talking about here? And now they want to introduce, what, $200 marriage voucher for newly married couples?
Healthcare,
Yeah,
No marriage
healthcare.
equality, though.
No marriage equality.
pensions.
We must demand the appropriate legislative action to put aside the legal fabrication created by a corrupt court system that corporations have the same rights as individuals. It is a fallacy. Only living things have natural rights. Only living things.
Yeah!
Do you agree with that? Only living things have natural rights. We must end also the concentration of media ownership, prohibiting any single individual or corporation from owning more than one major electronic or print media outlet. Sally was right,
Ridiculous.
because it is down to our ignorance, which is their greatest power. It is their greatest weapon. It is up to us to be completely informed, to know what is going on, and
It's
to actually...
their media that's informing us.
Exactly.
Misinforming.
We're very lucky. We're very lucky we have the internet so that we can at least get some semblance of accurate knowledge. We're very
Yeah, well said.
We must end also corporate donations to fund election campaigns.
Lobbying.
And we must place strict limits on individual campaign contributions. And we must absolutely ban corporations being able to fund election campaigns whatsoever. Because that does not stand. It does not stand. Until we take back our halls of government and until we cast out those who represent just the rich and the powerful, humanity will continue to stagnate under the weight of corporate oppression. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to everybody else who spoke. You guys were awesome. Thank you.